check in right now. I'm just going to cruise around the room one person at a time, and I want you to tell me how far along you are in your final paper process. So the earliest part would be you have finished your annotated bibliography, and that's where you're at. You still haven't fired up anything. Moving further along, you would kind of have an idea of which of the articles you want to use in your final paper. Moving further along would be you have an idea for what your argument is going to be. Moving further along would be you have a thesis statement. And further past that would be you started breaking out the topic sentences for your thesis statement. Does that make sense? Those four areas. So I just want you to tell me where you're at once around the room. All right. Okay.
I kind of know what articles I want.
Kind of know what articles?
Articles I want to promote.
Okay.
Thesis.
Thesis?
I know the argument.
Argument?
I know the article.
Okay. Bryson?
Thesis. Picking articles. I think I have a thesis.
Okay. All right. So generally kind of like seems like a lot of insurance. What I think would be a good idea would be for me to just kind of like walk through this process for one of our subjects so that you can see what it looks like and what goes into it kind of on a more specific level. Now, I'm going to do this with the caveat of, let's say we go with sports right now. That would mean that whatever I come up with up here, you cannot use in your paper. Okay, so it's not like, oh, sweet, I can just use that. Whatever I'm going to come up with is 100% shut down. So it's going to be helpful for you, but it's also going to be a little restrictive for the subject we choose. Got it? Okay, so what do we want to do?
Sports.
Okay, I'm going to have all of you pick a city in Wisconsin. No double choices. And the person who picks a city geographically closest to one I'm thinking of gets to choose our subject.
In Wisconsin?
It's in Wisconsin.
City.
The city in Wisconsin.
Eau Claire.
Eau Claire? Bryson?
Fond du Lac.
Fond du Lac? Okay. Allison?
Wausau.
Wausau's a city in Wisconsin.
Mosinee.
Mosinee? Okay. Milwaukee?
Superior.
Okay. All right. Adams Friendship? Why do you say Adams Friendship? Okay. That's it. What do you got, Cook? Kenosha. Stone Lake. Menominee. And Ella, pick a city in Wisconsin. Okay. Superior was closest. I was thinking of Bayport. Okay, so who was Superior? All right, what subject are we doing, Riley? Yep.
What are the other ones?
Just pick a subject, Riley. You're losing your shit. Don't pick gender. Environment. Okay, environment. All right. Okay, so if I'm going to do environment, and the reason I didn't want to pick gender is because only one person wrote about that, so I'm not as familiar with the gender topic as I am environment, sports, or something that I feel like I can do right now. So environment. So a lot of the articles in the environment deal with how the environment is getting worse. A couple of articles are about human responsibility for the environment. There's an article about land ethic, and land ethic means what, Ms. Cumlin?
It means taking care of the land.
Taking care of the land, like what our human morality is for taking care of the land and all that sort of stuff. So I got a bunch of articles about all of that stuff. Now I need to kind of cross this with what I think is interesting about the environment. So I have all of this stuff, but I also have my own brain and my own thoughts and opinions and beliefs about the environment. I've watched the Netflix series, Planet Earth. I've watched walruses jump to their death. Seeing birds of paradise do their hilarious mating ritual. And I know as a human being, the environment is something that is changing in a significant way. But I also know kind of as a human being that the cost of fixing that change is substantial. So I need to think about what what are my interests and opinions on the environment, and how do these things inform it? So, coming up with my argument. I know I want to try to do an argument about a couple of different topics. So let's just see here for a moment. What are some hot takes that Lindenberg has about the environment? The role of countries to combat global warming or climate change. And then beneath that, I have ideas about how the developing world is more prone to bearing the effects of the first parts of climate change. So I think about like these poor Pacific nations that, they're going to be the first to go underwater. But there's like 5 people who live on the island. So, they're going to suffer the effects of climate change before anybody else, but they're also like least able to help combat it. And then you also have the like first world countries. They have lots of resources. They are able to do things like engineer coastlines or whatever. They're able to build dams. I would think of like a place like the Netherlands. Netherlands would be underwater right now if it not were for the creation of dams and levees and stuff. So trying to think about that. I think I like this. Okay, so this is an interesting argument to me. This is an interesting subject to me. The role of different countries to help combat climate change. Does that make sense? We kind of see how we got to that point? No? Okay. I know this is what was being said about the environment from my articles. I also know that this is me and my interest in the environment right now. So I'm interested in the environment in the terms of who's responsible for helping combat climate change when it comes to the economic health of countries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to see how this thing that's interesting to me can be informed by these things that I read. Okay, if I were doing sports, for example, and you're not going to do this, so don't worry about it. There's a bunch of articles about sports. As a human being, I enjoy the intersection between sports and politics and how sports are kind of like used as this unintended place where political issues get debated. So while you think about sports as not related to politics, the intersection between sports and politics is unavoidable. So that is something that's interesting to me about sports. And so then I would go to those annotated bibliographies, articles about sports, and see if there's some way that I can come up with if my opinion about sports can be informed by that. Does that make sense? Your subject is what, Eve?
Language.
Okay, so that's going to be a tough one because you might not have a bunch of interesting, innate ideas about language, right? But you use it every day. So maybe it would be worth it for you to kind of just read about language and the circumstances or issues surrounding language. You could think about things like free speech, hate speech, First Amendment rights. When are those rights limited? When should those rights be taken away? Right now, there is a journalist who was arrested in San Francisco because they would not divulge their source for a kind of negative article that they wrote about the way in which government contracts are being awarded. So it's a pretty kind of like blatant violation of the First Amendment. And the journalists, they came into his house with a SWAT team, clearly meant to try to intimidate him. The SWAT team was sent in there by who? And this is all over words and the way in which words are the kind of the consequences of words. So maybe I would be interested about that. And I would think about if there's a way for language to play a role in what I'm talking about. Anyway, you might be in a bit more of a precarious situation, Eve, and would maybe benefit from hanging out with me individually for a little while. Anyway, to the rest of us, do we see how I have my own interest in sports, right? Not sports, the environment. I have my own interest in the environment. Now I need to go back up and see how that can be kind of like tied into any of my articles. Now, Ms. Cumlin, I'm going to lean on you. Who else has done the environment in here? Who else is doing the environment? Vensland, Risto, is that it? Okay, so I'm going to need to rely a little bit on your expertise for this next step. Okay, so when we talk about land ethic, could we speak more specifically about what that means in terms of how it's presented in the articles? Land ethic means what? What is the point they're trying to make?
Like in the article or what they are?
In the art, like what is the article saying about land ethics or like the relationship between humans and the environment, things like that. Don't be afraid to reference your annotated bibliography.
People are like, they're developing a land ethic, but because of multiple reasons, they're like not fully grasping what land ethics are.
And what are land ethics?
Developing consciousness of the land, or like finding the value in land.
Okay. And when you say people are developing land ethic, does that mean like they're in the process of learning about it? So how far along are people in their development of a land ethic?
They're like almost there, they're just kind of not there yet.
Okay. So I would fit that in down here with right now, people are treating land as an economic issue. Okay. Property value, how much it costs to maintain a coastline, this, that, or the other thing. So people are thinking of land as a monetary thing instead of a right. You know, in the sense of humans have a right to kind of, how do I want to phrase this? Like if I live on a coastline, I have a right to like live on that coastline, and I should not be displaced from my land because of decisions that are being made a world away. So as a world, we have a responsibility to treat land as a right and as a thing that humans are entitled to, and not under the pretension or under the consequences of like dollars and cents. As a world, we have a right to a food chain, food supply, fish, okay? And we should do whatever it takes to defend that fish hatchery population, no matter the cost. And if the cost is exorbitant, then it should be incumbent upon these countries that have the resources to help bear that burden so that the developing world can come in or can, be allowed to exist. Does that make sense? Class? Okay. So that's I'm just going to choose to do that one argument. So that land ethic helped me refine my position when it came to this argument that I thought I wanted to make. So do you see class, how I had an idea, and then by using one of these articles or two or three of these articles, I was able to become more precise with my idea. And at this point, does it sound like I'm just going to be simply summarizing Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3? No. I've taken the idea from one of these articles and I've used that to help make my argument more interesting and more precise. So like Allison, you would be in this spot right now. You have an idea for your argument? No. Who said they had an idea? Someone over here said they were in kind of like idea land as well. Okay, so Spencer, what's your subject is what?
Sports.
Okay, so what's kind of like your general idea?
Like sports are important.
Okay, sports are important. And that's going to be pretty easy for you to figure out how to inject your articles into there. Sports are important in what way, Spencer?
Because a lot of people care about them.
Think about the Teddy Roosevelt letter. Okay, how does that help you kind of refine your position that sports are important? Sports are important. So Teddy Roosevelt's letter, for those of you that don't know, is all about how he wants his son not to play sports so that he can focus on his studies. Okay? So how can I use that? That would almost be a counterpoint. Sports are not important. when it comes to the bigger issues in life. Your studies are important. Okay, so but then you contrast that with maybe like Joe DiMaggio. And that's an article about how Joe DiMaggio is experiencing life after sports and how important sports were to his development as a human being. So while Teddy Roosevelt would help make you kind of like lead you to the point where sports are not important because economically you're not going to play professional sports, right? So that could be an argument that's informed by that Teddy Roosevelt article. However, sports do help shape who you are as a person. And if you think about that Rick Riley article, that's talking about like sports as being important on a human level. Like sports is one of the only real things that exists in life. So sports are important in the sense of it helps bring you to the real world. Whereas politics is all about ideas, sports is all about tangible results and things that are happening. And it's the type of person you are as a human being in your actions that's more important than kind of like what you say. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now I took your idea was sports are important, and now that idea has been infused and informed by those other articles. So this is kind of how you go from having an idea for an argument to shaping that idea based on ideas that are presented in the articles that you read for class. Then once you have a precise idea for an argument, it's as simple as, not as simple, because it's not easy, creating your thesis statement. And then once you have your thesis statement, you should be able to go. Because once you have your thesis statement, you're able to map it out in terms of here's part 1 of my thesis, here's part 2, here's part 3. Okay, so for part 1, what are my topic sentences going to be? For part 2, what are my topic sentences going to be? For part 3, what are my topic sentences going to be? And then I'm rolling. Turn those topic sentences into paragraphs. It's okay to say no, and it's okay to say you have no idea what's going on. How helpful was this? Once around the room, because I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. Or do you have a question right away?
Yeah. Does each paragraph have to have like something like absolutely needs to be in it?
Well, paragraphs are constructed of what? Topic, sentence, context, evidence, analysis.
Okay.
So those would be the essential things you need to have in there.
So like an exact like quote or story or something from your essay.
Like, do we have to quote every time in there, or can we like paraphrase sometimes?
So you need to have evidence in your paragraphs. Evidence can come in the phrase, or evidence absolutely needs to come at times in your paper from the articles that you read. Evidence can also come from outside sources that you bring into the conversation. And maybe it might be especially interesting to take outside source and juxtapose it, which means places next to, book source, and get those two things humming together. So, again, not helpful. I have questions. I'm still way confused. So that's kind of like on one end of the spectrum. So this is, you have, you're like, that's a 1.
10 is like you could finish today.
10 is like you're a graduate.
I thought you were gonna make a wizard.
That would have been really cool. Yeah. Who said they thought I was going to make a wizard? Is that you, Risto? I wish I would have made a wizard at this point. So 1 means you're desperately, you're still like at square one. You have no idea. If you're a 5, that means that you can start, you feel like you're comfortable starting and getting going up until a thesis statement. So 5 means that, yep, I kind of know what's going on now. I can get to a thesis statement. Anything less than a 5 means that you still need help getting from an idea to a thesis statement. So maybe that a 2, 3, or 4 would mean that you still don't know how you're going to go about getting ideas from your article into your argument, or you still don't know what your argument is. A 5 means, yep, I can get to a thesis statement. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, anything above that means you just have more confidence in yourself from getting from thesis statement to topic sentences.
In our thesis, do you want us to counterclaim something? So like, while someone believes this and this and this.
Doing that in your thesis is helpful because it automatically kind of like cements that as being part of your paper, and that counterclaim stuff absolutely should be part of your paper. you don't necessarily need to put it precisely in your thesis statement.
Okay.
But know that it will appear in your paper at some point. Any other questions before I ask you to raise a hand? Okay, hand me up. Where are we at?
Like a number.
Number.
This is a point.
Okay.
Like half a finger.
4.5, 4, 5.
Why do they
Okay.
so confusing?
4.5.
Okay.
Should be like
Um,
half a finger.
I want people who are less than 5 to sit at that table and hang out with me specifically for, I mean, we only have about 5 minutes left, but we'll see what we can do. Everyone who's north of a 5, please get out of that table so that I can help some folks out.
Three.
There's